Welcome to season 2 of Fractional CMOs and the 90-Day Win. I'm Dean Way. This season, we're going to talk through some scenarios that companies and these CMOs experience to share lessons and tips on how to get the most out of a fractional CMO that you've hired. So, hi, Meredith.
Hi, Dean. How's it going?
Good, thanks. Okay, Meredith. So, here's the hypothetical. You just started a 1-year engagement as a fractional CMO. What's the first problem that most of your clients need you to start fixing in this situation? Or what problem do you just go looking for because you know it's there, even if the business doesn't see it yet? And tell the audience a little bit about yourself before you get into that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my name is Meredith Dennis. I am the founder of Compression Marketing and a fractional CMO with a product marketing background. So I bring that to all of my strategic growth initiatives, and I typically focus on regulated B2B organizations. So things like healthcare and education, finance, those sorts of industries are usually where you will find me. In terms of your question about entering into this hypothetical 1-year engagement, that first problem, right? I take a pretty structural approach. I call it a pod approach. Usually there's one of 3 things happening. There is either a problem that needs to be solved that is very obvious. There's an opportunity that they're trying to take advantage of, right? Whether it's growth or more opportunistic and positive, whereas problem sometimes has this negative connotation. And then the third is directive. Somebody has said, go do it. And so once we define which of those scenarios we're in, we really have to dive in and define the environment. Because if you have a big problem to solve, but none of the tools or manpower in place, that actually is your real problem. You mentioned things that you know are there that they don't. Usually that's one of those things is let's get a really clear lay of the land so that we can take what is currently your patchwork and make a really nice strategic picture out of it that you can then act on and do something productive with.
Right. Kelly, how about you? Hi, Kelly, by the way.
Hi, Dean.
Don't forget to introduce yourself and what problem do you like to tackle first?
So I'm Kelly Yale. I'm a fintech fractional CMO. I work mostly in the mortgage industry. So I spend most of my time creating and designing end-to-end data-driven customer relationship experiences. It helps the salespeople that I work with be able to predict behavior and make sure that sales is actually talking to people at the right time in the buying cycle.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the biggest purchase that most anyone will ever make. So we want to make sure that we're building a lot of rapport and a lot of trust and not inundating them with information that they don't need. When it comes to how I approach a customer or if I'm approaching a 1-year engagement, the thing I want to understand first and foremost is who the company is from a consumer perspective. Right. So since I come from a MarTech background, I like to examine the digital footprint, right? What is the consumer experience when they see the brand? What do they go through on the website? What content is out there that they can look at? What is that brand awareness? What is their reputation and what's the reputation management? How are they conversing with people who have a negative experience with their company? And then what their social reach is and who the biggest cheerleaders are. I like to know all of that before I go in, because when you talk to the C-suite, they're going to give you their interpretation of the company and what they want it to be. I'd much prefer to understand it from how other people experience the company.
Okay. Let's talk about that CEO for a second. So other than not keeping you in the dark about stuff, how does a CEO, you think, get maximum value out of a fractional CMO that's just been hired? Or if you like to answer it the other way, how do they not waste money?
Yeah. Very good point, right? Yeah. I think that being clear and being very, very honest, while it doesn't always win you the most points, I think, as Brene Brown says, clear is kind, right? Mm-hmm. I want them to be able to describe the heart of the business and their overarching goals, because typically that CEO is somewhat visionary in their perspective. But that fractional CMO has to go in and have not only sort of that customer experience that they've already had, and understanding the business or the product from the eyes of the audience. But that way we can listen and really, because sometimes with CEOs, right, it's all about ideas, and it's all about what they want to have happen. And I think a lot of times the CMO is in a position of having to really put down a realistic strategy. And I think as long as you tell them up front, like, this is something that I will be doing, I will be tackling sort of these ideas. I'm going to be telling you what your customers see, and I want you to understand that that's the value that I bring. But I think a lot of times with fractionals, what we can end up in is really high expectations if we're not very honest up front.
Right. No, that makes sense. And Meredith, what do you think? Other than sharing information, like, how does a CEO get maximum value for that 1 year they're going to have that fractional CMO?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said, Kelly, about clarity being kind. That's
Yeah.
so important. So important. The thing that I've seen happen a lot in some of the engagements that I've seen is this scope creep starts to happen very quickly. You have some really productive conversations, and all of a sudden their eyes are opened to all the different things you could maybe help them with, in addition to the core thing that you are there to functionally support. So I think a really, really important part of this is to not get mired in tactics. That can happen really quickly. All of a sudden, you can stumble into these things where you are doing a lot of in the weeds work that really does not satisfy some of those strategic objectives. So being extremely careful about how you talk about scope creep and the tactics that are being explored, and if that really does invite you to be a strategic partner to the organization or more of a tactician. And I just think that that's so important at the very, very early onset, especially with that C-suite, because they're going to hear something that sounds great and they're going to latch onto it. And I think it's important for us to be the enablers of that getting done, but not the doers. It doesn't mean that we don't roll up our sleeves and get in there and understand things. But I think it's incredibly important that we're there to help facilitate it and not be the ones actually shouldering it.
Okay, let's switch directions a little bit for a different hypothetical. Okay, your friend or peer, someone else you like them, another fractional CMO has just landed like their first ever. They've had some other stuff, but their first ever like situation like this, which is they've just been hired for their 1 year engagement. They're walking into a company where there's already a marketing team. There's no marketing leadership, but there's junior and mid-level folks. What sort of like one lesson or one warning would you give that person on what to do in their first week when they first get introduced and have to sort of move into that marketing team? Meredith, sorry.
I think that if you're lucky, there is going to be some sort of marketing team installed, even if it's just one person, but hopefully there are some resources there. So I think that, one, it's ideal if you're going in where there's some people there. But my biggest piece of advice is come in with a sort of seek to understand mentality. Ask a lot of questions. Be very open to building trust and relationships really quickly. I think those folks that are on that team, if they feel like you're coming in like a wrecking ball, that can be a really difficult dynamic to work in right off the bat. So just from the perspective of, I want to get to know you, understand you, know what your talents are. I think if you can really come in with that sort of humility as potentially their leader, it's going to help foster trust. It's going to build some really great relationships. And it's going to help you in that fractional CMO leadership position, perhaps know where you can help them grow and help them continue to be productive in their own careers.
Kelly, what do you think?
I couldn't agree with Meredith more. I have to say that, going in, being kind, assuring people that you are shoulder to shoulder, that you're going to you're in the boat to row. You're not in the boat to call, the shots. You're not trying to manage them, but you're really just trying to learn from them at every turn. Asking those questions, starting sentences with things like, I had an idea you likely had before. I just wanted to run it by you. Makes them feel like you respect kind of their creativity or their ideas. And honestly, just kind of changes the conversation from here's what I think you should do to, you likely have always wanted to do this. You may not have had the resources before. I'm here to help you have those resources. In my industry, we run across marketers who have just been glorified personal assistants for a long time, creating flyers, things like that. When you come in and you have a fractional CMO level sort of, basically role, you're coming in with really high level ideas that they genuinely probably always wanted to have and to deploy. And I always just put myself in a one down or an equal position to them. And I'm just here to help you.
Well, let's flip it around then. Imagine that it's Sunday night, and last week the company announced that they're going to bring in a fractional CMO, and you're one of those junior people or mid-level people on the internal marketing team, right? So, I mean, you Googled fractional CMO because you'd never heard of that term before, and but tomorrow that person is going to show up. What changes can you expect to see in your job, or maybe even sort of looking forward? What kind of questions or moves could you be making and planning for, given that there's now someone at the head of marketing?
Yeah, it can be challenging because it can feel really threatening, right? But feeling threatened brings out the worst in people. Being insecure brings out the worst in people. So, you just
Fear
can't
doesn't make people creative?
No, it doesn't. It's strange. Nor does it make a good leader, to be fair. Just my hope in that is that don't be scared of new, right? Because new doesn't have to be challenging. New can just be different. New ideas, new people, new process, and the important part I think always is meeting really early on, especially if it's just you and one other person. So if it's you and the CMO that's coming in, meet with them really early on to collaborate on what you're going to say or what you're going to present to leadership or what you're going to present to the team under you so that you're aligned. You don't have to worry about feeling like someone's going to one up you in that situation because you've already had those important conversations between the two of you.
Okay. Meredith, what do you think? What moves or what do you say in your first meeting when that person has they came in to listen, let's say, right? Before acting. And it's what should you tell them? You're the junior or mid-level
I think the first
person.
Yeah, right. And putting ourselves in the shoes of those folks. To me, it's incredibly important to come in. I referenced humility earlier, sort of coming in and acknowledging, I get this is a change. This is new. And for a lot of people, change does have that fear reaction of okay, what does this mean to me? And I think that acknowledgement very early on, it says, I realize that this is a change for you. This is new for you. And I am here to help shepherd us all through that. I think that has a really big, you kind of just see everybody's shoulders drop a little bit and bring the temperature down a little bit, maybe in some cases. It doesn't mean that it's always going to feel that way. But I think it's really important for them to know that you're going to be alongside them. Like Kelly was mentioning earlier, I think that's so important. And hopefully as a result of getting to partner with you in their day-to-day work, they're going to have more clarity and they're going to feel like they have more support. And as a result of you being in the room, it can actually make a big difference in how they sort of perceive themselves and the work that they get to do.
Okay. So Meredith, let's go back up to the CEO level for the last question we have in our session today. So we've talked about a 1-year engagement. So that is by definition a sprint because there's, a year ends on a certain date, right? Do you think CEOs or companies are better served when they hire fractional CMOs in a sprint mode or in a marathon mode where it's basically just going to keep going until something changes?
As with anything in marketing, it depends. I swear that's my favorite answer. But talking about when you say sprint, by its very nature, feels very tactical.
It does.
Right? It feels very urgent and it feels very process oriented, which has its place. And I think that when you come into if it is a 1-year engagement, you're going to have a very structured set of objectives that are very time bound. And if I think about what we talked about at the very top around identifying that core problem, and solving for whatever that core problem is, you've got to define what those requirements look like. And you may have a problem that's going to take more than 12 months to solve from a strategic perspective. So do I think it's better to hire as a marathon or hire as a sprint? I think the sprint has to be sort of laser focused on what it is that you're trying to accomplish in a very singular form, which is incredibly important. It's very different from, as a business, as an entity, as an organization, we want to accomplish some big vision type of goals. That takes a different level of connection and a different level of sort of being embedded in the organization with that C-suite, from the CFO to the CMO to the CEO, and really getting alignment on a very different level. The average full-time CMO, depending on which source you look at, is what, three years right now ish,
shorter than that, I thought. It's the shortest tenure of just about anybody in the C-suite.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so if you think about a typical fractional installment being on a similar time frame, it makes sense with those trajectories. But I would say that it's incredibly important to be focused on the strategic outcomes that you're there to help accomplish, and make sure that scope creep is not making it difficult for you to meet those objectives. I will say I've had people want to engage for 6 months, and I've said we can get started in 6 months. Like we can get some really good momentum going, and with any luck, you'll be enabled to run with it on your own. If I've done my job right, you are. But 6 months is a short time frame from a CMO perspective.
2 quarters, that's
change.
it. Mm-hmm. Kelly, what do you think? Sprint or a marathon? If I'm, in fact, let's reframe the question a tiny bit. If I'm a CEO and I'm hiring my the company's first ever fractional CMO, should I just accept that it's going to be X number of days per month or hours per week or whatever, ongoing, or should I set it up as kind of like a sprint, a long-term or 1 year or several quarters sprint?
I truly believe that it depends on the personality of that specific fractional, right? Because most of the fractional CMOs that I know have the unique ability to be incredibly adaptable and truly become subject matter experts very quickly. There is going to be a runway. I mean, there is going to be a time where we're having to learn and intake so much information, not only from our marketing peers, not only from how we're showing up in the world, but the directives of what everyone sort of wants and the reality behind how long that's going to take. So if you have goals that are like, hey, listen, we have this mission, and this mission can be broken down into basically 6 sort of tactical points. That might be something where you can get away with a sprint. I liken myself always to like a cheerleader. Like I walk in and I've got the pom-poms. I'm so excited and I want to cheer for this team, but I need to know a lot before I can really give a learned opinion on how long any of those things are going to take, because there are so many different pieces of the puzzle that have to come together before we're able to say, we're going to be successful in the following ways, and this is how we do it. But I think fractionals are such an amazing thing because we have expert guidance from the minute you hire us.
Right.
Like you don't have to ramp us up. We don't have to have all these things. I don't have to learn, SEO strategies. I don't have to learn something. I understand it. What I'm really looking to do is to understand their business. And most of the time, the people who are hiring for that genuinely do understand that they can't get to the next level without hiring an expert. And so a fractional CMO is so important there. But sprint or marathon is a tough one because it really just comes down to the objectives of the company and the dreams of what their future is going to be.
I can't ask easy questions on a podcast. There's no point. Right? The whole thing would be over in 6 minutes. Meredith, so the CEO of what kind of company should be contacting you, and how would they contact you?
So I love talking to CEOs that are in startup mode, whether that is for a brand new fledgling company or a company that is sort of in this place of high growth. I spend a lot of time working with early stage companies that are sort of ramping up to let's say their first 50 million or so. They can reach me pretty much anywhere they want to reach me. They can call me, they can text me, they can email me, but you can find me on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time publishing content over there. And you can find me at compressionmarketing.co.
And Kelly, who and how?
Like Meredith, I have to agree. I think every fractional's kind of dream job is to work with a startup where the energy is really high and people are open to new ideas. I truly agree with that. I work a tremendous amount in fintech with technology companies. So it's really ironic. I spend a lot of time integrating platforms and laying the customer experience down, but then I end up working as a fractional for all those tech companies. I don't know how this ends up happening to me, but it does definitely happen. I owned a social media company 15 years ago before they existed. So I'm Kelly Yale on every platform at Kelly Yale. And then you can always find me at octostrategies.com.
All right. Well, thanks both of you for being here. I really appreciate it. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you.
And
Thanks
for
having us.
watching. And we'll see you in the next episode.